Welcome to Shoot the Captain. Today's topics are Star Wars Ronin, a visual novel,
Also, The Many Saints of Newark, a Sopranos story.
and Greedfall. But we will talk about that later. You can find us here on youtube.com and follow us on our various social media channels, but we will talk about that later. Let's go ahead and dig into some of these new announcements. I am very excited for what's happening with the Star Wars novels. Again, I had mentioned this maybe in a couple of podcasts ago. I don't know if we ever
Yeah,
mentioned it
yeah.
off air, but I had mentioned how I'm very excited for a lot of these Star Wars books that are coming out.
Right.
Some of the newer, I don't want to say like true canon because they're really playing with the Star Wars license, not really
Mm-hmm.
trying to invigorate the franchise based on the movies. But again, I always feel like a lot of what Star Wars does is because it is a franchise, because it's a big IP. It always tries to build its own stories and many characters off of the screen. Because again,
Right.
Star Wars is the movie series, right? But a lot of the game characters or side characters like Ahsoka,
Expanded
Kanan
universe
Jarrus,
people.
expanding universe people, animated shows, novels, all these things add up to a bigger world, or at least they
Right.
get to play in that same world that universe is set in.
Yes. Yes.
And there's been recent announcement that a new book that's coming out is called Star Wars Ronin. Now, for the listeners that are watching this episode right now, I'm going to go ahead and put the image right here. And I'm going to go ahead and show Rob the image of this new Star Wars book. And I'm going to go a little bit into what it's about.
All right.
Right?
All right. I dig that.
Ronin, a Visions novel. A mysterious former Sith wanders the galaxy in the stunning Star Wars tale, an original novel inspired by the world of the Duel from the Star Wars Visions animated anthology, which I remember I had shown you about a week ago. I think around 4th of July, they
Mm-hmm.
announced that they're making kind of like the Animatrix. Did you ever see that?
Yeah, I did. Where it was a couple of different animation styles,
Mm-hmm.
kind of like Gotham Knight was,
Mm-hmm.
and Halo Legends.
Exactly. So they're doing the same thing for Star Wars. They're going to make separate anime studios. They're going to go ahead and make little tales doing different animation styles
When is that coming out?
in September.
In September. Okay.
And this book, I think, is coming out around that same time, actually. But either way, the Jedi are the most loyal servants of the Empire. 2 decades ago, Jedi clans clashed in service to the feuding Lord. Sickened by this endless cycle, a sect of Jedi rebelled, seeking to control their own destiny and claim power in service of no master. They called themselves Sith. The Sith rebellion failed, succumbing to infighting and betrayal, and the once rival lords unified to create an empire. But even an empire at peace is not free from violence. Far off the edge of the Outer Rim, one former Sith wanders, accompanied only by a faithful droid and the ghost of a less civilized age. He carries a lightsaber but claims lineage to no Jedi clan and pledges allegiance to no lord. Little is known about him, including his name, for he never speaks of his past nor his regrets. His history is guarded as the red blade of destruction he carries sheathed at his side. As the galaxy perpetual cycle of violence continues to interrupt his self-imposed exile, and he is forced to duel an enigmatic bandit claiming the title of Sith, it becomes clear that no amount of wandering will ever let him outpace the specters of his former life. So, a reason why I wanted to bring this up, Star Wars Ronin is straight up a Japanese feudal era novel of
Mm-hmm.
set in the Star Wars universe.
It's a Akira Kurosawa
Hmm.
film.
And they're straight up going with they even said it with some of the on the main author who's writing this book. It's like it's totally inspired by those times
Yeah.
or even those movies too.
Yeah.
And
That looks amazing. That's like a Star Wars meets Samurai Jack.
exactly, pretty
Yeah.
much. And even Samurai Jack has a lot of sci-fi elements to
Yeah,
it, like a lot of
absolutely.
sci-fi elements. And I thought it was really cool that again, we all know Star Wars are inspired by Western, cowboy movies,
Hmm.
Japanese media. Like you
Yeah.
can clearly see the inspirations of what
World War II dogfight films.
exactly.
Yeah.
Like you could see all these inspirations in Star Wars, and I'm glad that not only are they making the anime anthology to give Japan a taste, not taste, but like their spin of
Right.
those Star Wars mythology and what they could do with it in their art style, but also we're getting this book based on one of those little animated anthology films, and then
Yeah.
giving that a little bit more breather in the world. And again, you're just setting Star Wars in the feudal Japan era. You're making different clans, master lords. He's really just a Ronin. He's just a
Yeah.
sword for hire that wanders the galaxy.
That reminds me of the episode of The Mandalorian, The Jedi,
Hmm.
where Ahsoka comes out. That whole episode just felt like an old samurai film from like the 1950s, 1960s. and seeing that the style of the art, it looks like a I'm sorry, I said woodblock, a woodblock print. You know, like
Right.
something you'd see on some old scroll or something like that. That art cover is amazing.
And he
Yeah,
has a
that's
metallic sheath.
that's really cool.
And it just, again, he
The
looks
fact that it's a sheathed lightsaber, that's
right.
pretty cool. It's always on.
And
That's
again,
awesome.
and that's one thing I do appreciate. Even though, again, you can claim that Star Wars quality isn't consistent all the time,
Yeah.
but they do take chances and they do have fun with it. Now,
Yeah.
some people would argue that this isn't really taking a chance; it's just going back to its source material. You know, what I'm saying, especially
It's
since it
still
was
taking a
inspired.
chance. I think it's still taking a
Definitely,
chance. Yeah.
especially how the Mandalorian gives you that Western cowboy vibe
Yeah.
throughout the entire show, right? In again, this could also fail, but again, I just love that they're going this way, giving us like they're letting authors and artists play with the Star Wars licenses, and hey, let's just make something cool like
Yeah.
that Star Wars adjacent, even if it's not going to be canon. This isn't going to be something. No, this is how the Jedi and Sith fought for no,
Right.
this is its own thing. That's just for fun. Just it's a different take on Star Wars.
Like the Mandalorian, it's kind of like it seems like it's playing in that gray space.
Right.
It's not as clear cut. The movies are very clearly about light and dark.
Right.
And the Mandalorian, you see kind of the gray area in between because he's a little morally ambiguous at times, at least in the beginning of the show.
And he said, and that show sets up a time period that we don't get a lot of. At least they're starting to fill in, which is what happened between Return of the Jedi and Force Awakens. What
Right.
happened to that time when the Empire fell?
Yeah, yeah.
And they're trying to see, like, hey, not everything was super cheery. There was still remnants of the Empire still out there.
If the First Order came to be, there must have been, you know what I mean? Like
Exactly.
the time and the strife of the time enabled the First Order to come to be. You know what I
Exactly.
mean?
Even like some of the more animated kid shows, Star Wars Resistance, they try to give you like a taste of like, you know what, some people didn't agree with what happened at the end of the war. They didn't want the rebels to win because they liked the structure. Even though it was imperial rule, even though it was colonialism, it did bring law and order to a chaotic galaxy, or at least some
Right,
planets
right.
benefited from that status quo.
Yeah, there's some people like in Last Jedi where the rich people who were dealing weapons to the First Order and to the Rebel Alliance. I could see where people profit from the existence
The dichotomy of two warring factions.
yeah, yeah, where that's their bread and butter, and it's cool that they showed that in that movie. But right here, it's really cool that they're showing a I don't know. I want to see it. I want to read it.
Right.
Yeah.
And I just find that it's really cool that they're doing that. They're doing this animated anthology series from Japan. They're making a book specifically about one of those anthology series you're gonna watch. You're gonna watch that show, and it's gonna tie directly into this book about this character. And I just love Japanese folklore and things like that, especially the feudal Edo period. Which when we had Japanese lords, providences, Ronin, mercenaries, all.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just like Japanese 101 in films
Yeah,
and movies.
yeah.
Even Kill Bill references a lot to it too.
It was like 200 years of straight war.
Yeah.
I think it was just 200 years of just constant battling.
Right.
And seeing that in a Star Wars setting is kind of cool because
Yeah.
that's really similar to Star Wars. It's at least as far as we know.
Yeah.
It's at least 50 years of battling, and that's just what we see in the films. That's not even going further back,
Right.
And you're saying that we're going to get books about Jedi's 100, 200 years before the films even started.
Exactly, and that's the book series I've been reading, The High Republic,
The High Republic, yeah.
which is the series that again was based on one line from the movie about Obi-Wan telling Luke that the Jedi's were the guardians of peace for like 1,000 years, right?
Yeah.
And again, they just made an entire series just based on that quote.
Do you know how this connects to the High Republic,
That's the
or
thing.
if it connects at all?
This doesn't connect at all. It's its own thing. It's just a one-off. We're just gonna tell a really cool Japanese samurai like type of novel, but set in this universe. And again, the reason why it's not connected is because the Jedi are the Empire in this version. You get it? Like they're in this Sith, this person who's considered evil in regular Star Wars mythology, because Sith are the bad guys, right?
Yeah.
And seems to be like, I don't want to fuck with any of you guys. I think you're both terrible.
Yeah.
I just want to be alone.
Yeah. That's what Ahsoka becomes eventually, right?
Yeah,
With
she
the
does.
lightsaber. She's not aligned to the Sith or to the Jedi.
No. In at least in the stories with Clone Wars, she sees the bad things about the Jedi that they, always
Arrogance.
the arrogance, the fall of the Jedi Order, the things that Luke had mentioned, or even other characters in the entire series have mentioned. But like I told you offhand, or whenever we talk about Star Wars, that I don't think the prequels really show it that well.
Yeah.
That the Jedi were dogmatic, or that they were the problem as well. That they became enforcers for an army, for a government. They were no longer the nomadic people that they set out to be, to bring peace to the
Right.
universe.
Okay, so this anthology series, is it episodic or is it going to be released as like a feature film length thing that's going
It's
to
gonna
have?
be released as a, well. Actually, that's a good question. I'm not sure,
Yeah.
but my understanding is it's gonna be kind of like the Animatrix. It's gonna come out all in one go, and it's gonna have like episode one's this
Yeah.
from this anime studio. Episode two is this story from this anime
The
series.
big three, we mentioned them earlier. For me, in that kind of form of storytelling, would be Animatrix, Halo Legends, and Batman Gotham Knight.
Right.
Those three, and all three of them have really awesome animation, really ambitious, and it's cool because they play in goofy spaces too.
Yeah.
They play in comedic spaces too. There's another show, I'm not sure if you've watched it on Netflix, called Love, Death, and Robots.
Right.
It was initially meant to be a reboot of Heavy Metal, the heavy metal magazine from the 70s, which was like a high sci-fi, high fantasy type of stuff, like R-rated type stuff. It was initially meant to be that, like a reboot of the 80s movie that they made of that magazine. And something happened. David Fincher from Fight Club and Seven and all those like heavy, David Fincher, right?
Yeah.
He did Alien 3. He did The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, The Social Network. He directed all of those. He was trying to make it a heavy metal adaptation for the modern age, but something happened where they just sold it to Netflix and they made it happen that way. That is an example of like an episodic anthology where each
Right.
episode is different. But I like the idea of it all happening in one go. That's kind of cool too. It's not conducive to the streaming platform. You think that they would be able to like string you along a little bit and show
Right.
you one episode after another.
Well, I'm not sure. It could be that.
Sure. Either one is fine. I'm
Yeah.
cool with getting, dope ass Star Wars animation with Ronins in it. Fuck
Yeah. Especially when you know how crazy anime animation can be.
Yeah.
Especially the way they do fights. Like, I'm already excited that one of my favorite anime studios, Trigger, which are known to make crazy anime fights,
Yeah.
are doing a story about a twin brother and sister. One is the dark side, one is the light side user.
That's awesome.
And they're gonna go at it. And I love to watch anything that they make.
Yeah. That's awesome. I can't wait for that. I didn't know about that. I found out about it today, right now when you were telling me. Yeah, that's really cool.
But either way, I like that. Again, they're taking the license, doing fun stuff with it, flipping on its head, not adhering to
Status quo.
the status quo. That I
Yeah.
think wouldn't. See, this is my point that I want to bring to this topic here.
Yeah.
I don't think this could have been done if the Star Wars was still under George Lucas, or if he still owned this property. In
That's
some
interesting.
in
Yeah.
some good ways, again, Disney, the all powerful conglomerate,
Conglomerate.
conglomerate.
I got you, man.
Okay. Again, it's a soulless company. They're just out there to make money. They bought this franchise for $4 billion. They're gonna freaking
Yeah.
wring it for as much blood that there is.
Yeah.
Until they can make no more money on this, right?
It's not successful until they make 40 billion.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? And I think they're on their way.
And again, like you mentioned, they're on their way. They're making good shows, but they're also because they have the license, because they have the money, they are able to give it to people who can, like, hey, you want to make an awesome Mandalorian show? Here's a budget. Go fucking make it, right?
To the John Favreau's and the Dave Filoni's and even the Patty Jenkins, where she's doing a Rogue Squadron.
Exactly.
Yeah,
And
I can't wait for that.
And then same thing for the comic book side. They give it to Kevin Scott's making the Tempest Storm for the High Republic. They're doing the High Republic is again that
No, the Tempest Storm.
Oh, that's the next. Sorry, I apologize. That's the next book right now. So it's the second
okay.
book of that
series.
That series, right?
Great.
And again, this is called Project Illuminary or something like that. And this is the book series that they're setting out to do, which is called the High Republic era. Again, I don't think that's something that could have been done under George Lucas because again, he wants to make quality stuff. I understand that, right? And Disney wants to make money, right? But at the same time, you can have both. You can have multiple Star Wars things going at the same time and make profit off of it and also be good too. Because even though Disney is a corporation that, has its faults, right?
Right.
But they're not dumb. They know that if the quality's not there, it's not. People are not going to come to it.
That's true, and I think they learned that the hard way when it came to that kind of dip that they felt between The Last Jedi and Solo, and then what the way people felt about you know
Yeah.
yeah, Episode 9. But let's move on. But I disagree in the sense of like I don't see what George Lucas was doing and what Disney was doing and what Disney is doing. I don't see it as all that different, if I'm being honest.
Okay.
I feel that Disney is doing exactly what George Lucas is doing, except they're handing the reins over to capable filmmakers, to capable storytellers. Where George Lucas was, in my opinion, resting on his laurels in a way.
I can see that.
Where he wasn't going for quality. He was going for that clause. And this is how I feel. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm full of shit. Comment below if you guys want me fired. If you guys want me fired from the show, I'm done. For me, he was working towards that clause in the original contract he made with 20th Century Fox that said he owns merchandising rights.
Right.
And it seemed like everything that he was doing was to create more characters, more ships, more costumes, more variants of the same character to make more toys, to make more, a character couldn't look the same in two films. They had to be different. And it wasn't just to show that time has passed. I think it was to make a new toy about it.
Star Wars is one of the original IPs that created merchandising rights, and
that's true.
And again, sold an entire toy line that propelled it for years when the movies were in the downturn.
Not only that, not only did they sell toys and merchandise for years, the toys were selling out before the movie even came out.
Right.
Because there were ads in comic books, on cereal boxes. There were ads for the toys. I had an old comic book where there was a typo, and instead of Han Solo, it was Hans Solo. You know what I mean? But it was an official, and it was an old comic book from the 70s. Like
the Rainbow Boba Fett? Or the misproduction toy?
I don't remember that, but that sounds great. I think it was an old Heroes for Hire comic book I had. It was a Luke Cage Iron Fist comic book that I had, and it had an ad like that. But I really feel that Disney, I have to give them credit in some degree where I'm a fan of Solo. I like Solo.
Yeah, Solo's great.
I liked Rogue One. And I liked The Force Awakens. I thought they were like 3 great movies, and I'm a huge fan of The Mandalorian. Those are 4 individual titles coming out under Disney when George Lucas has had the titles for how long? And you can probably cut the 3 prequel trilogies and make one solid movie out of them.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So sorry if I'm deviating from the point too much, but that's for me. It's I don't see Disney. I feel that they might be succeeding despite The Last Jedi and with issues with The Last Jedi that people have.
And Rise of
Skywalker. There's a lot to love about what Disney's doing with it. And this, to me, I think, putting it in the hands of capable storytellers is the beginning of
building this universe out more.
It's the beginning of ensuring quality.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
I can see that, yeah.
Where it's like George Lucas was not going to hand the reins over to anybody unless they had $4 billion. You know what I'm saying? But maybe I'm full of shit. That's just how I just feel by looking at the situation from where I'm standing,
In Disney, they're the masters of merchandising. They're the masters of being able to get fans and people to make it a generational love. Like people who love Mickey Mouse have shared that love with their family, with their kids to the next generation.
Yeah.
That's the power of Disney. They understand the power of family branding and nostalgia, right?
And they understand the marketability of a cinematic universe, not just because of Marvel, but before every Disney film, you had a shared cinematic universe with Mickey Mouse and Goofy and Donald Duck, and they were
Pixar movies.
Pixar movies too. But what I mean is, I'm talking back in the day, in the 30s and in the 40s, you had Mickey Mouse cartoons, you had Donald Duck cartoons. They were the first ones to put them in the same cartoon, to put them in the same shorts.
Right.
Warner Brothers came in and did that later and started adding the Looney Tunes.
Right.
But before, they were individual characters. Once in a while, you get Daffy Duck with Porky Pig, blah, 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 blah. But Disney was the first one to be like, no, these guys are all living in the same world.
Right.
These, goofy cartoons are all living in the same world. And I think that they understand the value of that. And I see that permeated in what they're doing with Star Wars.
Right. And again, I just want to throw that question out there because, again, I feel like George Lucas may have gone for something like this. Like, this sounds like something he would have loved if he
Yeah.
knew that, hey, you guys are gonna take my IP and make a samurai book novel out of it. Go for
Yeah.
it. I would approve it. I could see Disney doing the same thing. I just like that we're in this era where, sure, there's a lot of merchandise and a lot of it's just to make money. But
Yeah.
if you're a person like me who's a fan of Star Wars and its different iterations, and kind of like how we're raised on comic books, we don't mind different interpretations of the same
Yeah.
character, right?
Yeah.
And if you're able to play with that, then guess what? There's a show for you. There's a novel here. There's a comic book here that you may
Exactly.
enjoy to keep playing in that universe. Because if you love a certain series and love what where those characters are based from, or new characters that come out from those series, then that just means more, more positive feedback for them. Like, one
Hmm.
thing from the recent Star Wars comic books, right now that's back under Marvel, they created a character called Dr. Aphra, and she's an amazing Han Solo type of character that has her own identity and has her own
Nice.
vibe. And again, we don't see her in the movies, but we can maybe one day
Right.
in
Right.
a show. She might show up as a hacker in
Yeah.
freaking Mandalorian. We don't know.
Just like Ahsoka. Like,
Yeah.
who the fuck knew that Ahsoka was Rosario Dawson this whole time? You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Where the casting was on point. And before we move on to that, I want to say that if they deliver quality, if they want our money, earn it.
Exactly.
If they deliver quality, fan bases and just moviegoers and people who consume pop culture content don't mind paying. It's been proven over and over and over. It's not that hard to please people,
Hmm.
if you can have, we're on fast 9. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not that hard to please people. You just give people a good time. You make them feel like what they're watching matters, and then you move on to the next thing. I think that as long as they're putting quality into the product, quality into the artwork, and approach it as artwork,
Yeah.
even if it's to
And
make
get
money,
the right people behind it.
get the right people behind it, make the right decisions, and even if they're alienating part of the audience, guess what? Sometimes you get alienated by things that happen in life,
Exactly.
And I think that I like it. I have my problems with it,
Definitely.
but I'm excited of what they're doing as far as like expanding, recreating that expanded universe that they kind of wiped clean when they acquired the property.
Exactly. Because again, like you said, like when they wiped it clean, that happened to the expanded universe novels. All
Hmm.
that got, uh, I don't want to say uncanonized because that doesn't feel right because they're
Yeah,
still selling
it's
those
a great
books.
word.
They're just rebranding them as legends. Those books are being still
Oh,
reprinted, and again, it's not officially part of the canon. But at the same time, who gives a fuck?
right.
They're still great
It's in the
books,
fucking book.
and,
Yeah.
and sure, maybe this version of Luke that you came on the last year you didn't enjoy. You can still read the book of what he ended up marrying Mara Jade and fucking
Yeah.
having their version of the Jedi. They're still there. They're not ignoring it either.
And Force Awakens and Last Jedi could still happen, and the Mara Jade stories could have still happened.
Yeah.
Luke could have kids out there. He could, there's a,
Again,
he,
I feel like since we come from, we understand the comic book world, right? Where you can have different interpretations about a
right,
certain
right,
IP, right? And Star Wars, I think they're starting to experiment that with that now. We're like, hey, let's just have fun with this world. Let's
right,
use some
right.
of the mythos and try to make something new. And that's why I like about this Ronin novel is that again, it's that fun of like, hey, this is like Star Wars. It's
Yeah.
not Star Wars, but you may enjoy what you read.
But it is.
You know.
But it is Star Wars. You know what I mean? It's right across the top. You know what I mean? So what I'm saying is like Star Wars is what the people that are making it want it to be, despite what fans believe. It's whoever owns the property, whatever they want to make out of it, that's what it is.
And people will respond to it in kind. If it flops, it flops,
It
right?
flops, it flops.
If it's
Yeah.
successful, then they hit it right on the market.
Exactly. But I think you have to let these storytellers and let these artists and let these producers or make your money, tell good stories,
Yeah.
And then going from the different iterations of things, it's almost like in regards to that, you have like the Batman killing rule,
Right.
where there's stories where him killing works.
Right.
Him killing it's part of his character arc for that story,
For that universe or wherever
for
he's
that
in.
whatever it is.
Yeah.
Even if it's I don't, for me, my Batman, my headcanon Batman has killed. You
Right.
know what I mean? And he's it tortures him. It bothers him. It fucks with him. Because Michael Keaton killed, Ben Affleck killed, even Christian Bale killed. I think Adam West is killed. You know what I mean? He turned a bunch of sailors into powder in the '60s. And I think that we have to embrace these parts of canon that we don't like. In certain times, we have to embrace it and take them and be like, no, this is part of, the mythology of this character. The way Zeus, would turn into a bull and fuck women and have demigods. You know what I mean?
There's always good and bad to anything. There's gonna be parts that you don't enjoy,
or that are weird.
If someone again, I don't personally enjoy the Rise of Skywalker. There's people who love it. More power to them.
Who are these people and where are they? Let's find these people and break their knees. No, I'm just kidding.
No, but again, I'm glad that they enjoyed that film. Did I enjoy the film? Not all of it. There's parts that I do like. There's parts that I enjoy. I'm always gonna freaking love Ian McDermott coming back as the Emperor. I always like that. He can never do wrong in my opinion. I just didn't agree with how they introduced him in that movie.
Somehow
he's alive.
Somehow we got him back.
But again, Star Wars has always been that, where it's not just a good consistent good quality that just builds over time. There's the goods, there's the bad, and then you take what you can from it. In my opinion, a lot of Anakin's character from the prequels was actually built and actually treated well in the Clone Wars show. And to me, Clone Wars Anakin is the Anakin I think about when I read the books, when he shows up in other media. That's the Anakin I think. I don't really think about
Hayden Christensen's
portrayal until the last one, until the third one. Because I have read all these stories and seen the shows where you got to see him go from a Jedi Knight and then him interacting this war, and every time he goes to a planet, every time he helps someone, you see this dichotomy in the background where you're not only does he have potential for great good, but he understands there's the potential for, this could be better if people just did it my way. You see that silver lining of where
that dictatorship.
Exactly, because man, why can't people just get along? If I told them how to live their lives, they would have such better lives. And I love it. You don't see that in the movies. You don't see that dichotomy.
You see the conversation with Padme where he goes, people will do, they'll be, or you tell them or whatever. There's a scene with Padme where he says something that where she's like, that's not diplomatic, blah blah blah. But I'm with you on that. Where in the prequels, it's almost like you're seeing. You're watching a couple of bad days Anakin had.
Right.
You get what I'm saying? You watched a bad day he had when he was a kid. You watched some dope shit that he did. A couple of right place, right time situations. Then you see they're pivotal points in his character arc. But there's all this meat in between those slices of bread. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That we're not seeing until you get into expanded universe stuff. Until you get into Clone Wars and all that stuff. So Star Wars being a sprawling universe that it is, it needs this stuff. It needs this experimentation. It needs the westerns.
Yeah.
It needs crime dramas, which has me excited for Book of Boba Fett.
Yeah, exactly.
It
needs what happens to the soldiers who risk their lives to fight a war that they're suddenly the enforcers of an empire, and that's what we're getting with the Bad Batch. Again, that's what I like about Star Wars, that it's so big. You can tell so many different stories from people who are not just the Jedis on top. You could tell the stories from the foot soldier, from the smuggler, from the scientist or the politician who had to deal with the aftermath of what happened. And I think that's what's cool about Star Wars. I always liked that they've always had these parts where you can expand and make cool books like the Ronin. We're like, hey, let's just give you a cool story, and we're just gonna set it in Star Wars and hope you enjoy.
Yeah. It gives you a great sandbox to just play.
Exactly.
Play in, and as long as for in my opinion, those misfires, you have to learn how to forgive them. You know what I mean?
Because there's always going to be bad stuff.
Yeah, there's always going to be poor choices. There's always going to be circumstantial things. I mean, Solo,
like Carrie Fisher dying early.
Yeah, that was
that's something.
Up.
That's something that they no one could have anticipated, and I'm pretty sure that deeply affected what Rise of Skywalker was going to be.
Or the directors leaving in the middle of Solo.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Which let's be real. Ron Howard was an upgrade. Ron Howard's an Oscar-winning director. You know.
But these guys have made amazing films after Solo. I'm like, I kind of want to see what their original vision was, because they made Into the Spider-Verse, which blows my mind, But I don't know. Again, that's why I have mixed feelings about Solo, because Solo's a great movie. I think people don't. It's an underrated movie, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I wish it had the sequels that it had was trying to set up, right? But at the same time, also, I'm very curious. What was their original vision? You know?
I'm curious too, but I'm also satisfied with the sum of the parts.
Right.
Where
Exactly.
there's maybe those guys were being too funny, maybe because that's what they said. They were being too comedic to
Hmm.
the point where they felt that they were making fun of making fun of the source material. On the flip side of that, Ron Howard brings like a gravity to it, a seriousness to it that maybe helped create stakes when you're watching it.
Right.
The Kessel Run thing and Lando fucking his robot or whatever they were doing, whatever was going on there. I get it, it's strange. It's like, do we really need an explanation as to why Han Solo calls his ship a she?
Right.
We don't. You know what I mean? It's the ship. You call her a she because it's a ship, like the Queen Mary. You
Hmm.
know. But when you get past that, it's pretty solid. It's a better, in my opinion, it's a better film than The Last Jedi and Rise of Skywalker.
How dare you? No, just kidding.
You know, and not only that, the lead actor, there's an essence of Harrison Ford that he did capture.
Yeah.
There's a thing. There's like a seasoning, like a taste of Harrison Ford that's in there. He's still himself, but watch the first one.
Hmm.
And there's like a naive.
A New Hope.
Yeah, A New Hope.
And then watch Solo.
And then watch Solo. It's like, yeah, if you add some youth and naivete
Yeah.
to that character,
Yeah,
you might end up with the guy in Solo.
Exactly.
You know what I
Like
mean?
he had to start from somewhere, and this
Yeah.
was a prequel movie.
He wasn't just this badass fucking right off the bat. He didn't come out the womb like that.
Exactly.
So he had to be like that somehow, or get that way somehow.
And talking about prequels,
All right. Many Saints of Newark has me excited. Trailer just came out, last week, 2 weeks ago, maybe?
mhm. And this is a movie that is tied to another show, right?
It's tied to Sopranos. It's
Okay.
a Sopranos story. Kind of in the same vein, El Camino was a movie based in the Breaking Bad universe. They're doing that with the Many Saints of Newark coming out on HBO Max and coming out in theaters.
Oh, so it's going to be a streaming and theatrical release?
I think it's simultaneous release. It's going to
Okay.
be 30 days on HBO Max. And when I was a kid, Sopranos came out in 1999.
Mhm.
When I was a kid, I watched the first season. We had cable, but we used to like bootleg it. So I started watching the first season. Then we didn't have cable anymore because we got caught, and then I fell off. HBO Max comes out. I've had all this time to catch up, and I just haven't.
Mhm.
HBO Max comes on. I heard about the prequel, but it wasn't like in the forefront of my consciousness. It was just kind of floating around in there.
I didn't know that they were making a prequel to the series. I'm guessing that because of HBO Max or just HBO in
It
general.
was announced 3 years ago.
Oh, 3 years
And they've
ago.
been talking about it since before James Gandolfini died.
Okay, got you.
James Gandolfini plays Tony Soprano. In this case, his son, his real life son, Michael Gandolfini, plays Tony Soprano, which is, I think it's an appropriate way to get an iconic character, as long as his acting chops. I mean, no one can replace James Gandolfini, in my opinion. He just embodies that character in a way that he makes him feel like a real person. You see the entire spectrum of this person's emotional states. For those of you who don't know, it's an old show. So if you haven't watched it, he's a mobster and kind of in the vein of Analyze This.
And the
and
show's
Analyze
The
That.
Sopranos, right?
In The Sopranos, James Gandolfini plays Tony Soprano, who's kind of an underboss of the Soprano crime family in Newark, New Jersey.
And was this ever based on on a real history, or is this just like the imitation of what was happening with the Italian mob and the Italian families?
It's fictionalized.
Okay.
It's definitely fictionalized, but it's almost like these things become anecdotes and archetypes.
Yeah.
So there are things that have happened in real life. Things like the trash strike from the 70s in New York, where the mobsters and the Teamsters, like you can tie the thing. The Sopranos is kind of
what was the trash strike?
Oh, there was something going on with the mobsters and the unions in New York,
Mhm.
and in the 70s, the trash the trash companies
Yeah.
just stopped picking up trash. So the streets of New York were covered in trash. They kind of touch on that in Joker, where the
Oh,
streets
right, right.
of Gotham were covered in trash. But if you look at like Taxi Driver and cinema from the '70s in that area,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, yeah, cinema from the '70s in on the East Coast, northeast of the country, you see all of that stuff. It's in the culture. It's in, you know
Right.
what I mean,
For
like
that time period.
for that time period. And there were, you can see where they tie in, major assassinations, the Kennedy assassination. There's conspiracy theories about mobsters being tied to
And
that.
all that shows up in the show as this like, are they alluding to it, or
They allude to it, but it's on the scope of the show.
Gotcha.
So they have councilmen, city councilmen. There's a trash strike in the show. There's, they have to deal with unions. They have to deal
Oh,
with,
I see what you
know what I
mean.
mean. So it's kind of like a
It's
fictionalized version of things
their
that
spin
really.
on it's their spin on those events that happened during that time period.
But more than anything, the show's more like you see the way characters evolve in that world. You see that they're essentially slaves to this code, and they're stuck to this code, and they have to abide by it because their lives literally
The code of living as a mobster.
the code of living as a mobster.
Gotcha.
There's rules, where you have to respect the boss. You have to respect each other's women. You have to, you know what I mean? Like, you have to respect each other's homes. If you make any money, if you make $1, you have to kick up a certain percentage to the boss. And if the boss says that's not enough, then you keep putting money in his hands until he says he's had his full.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
So now that we understand that The Sopranos is this mobster show, this is they did back in when was this series first made?
The series was made in the 90s.
90s, right?
And it was in 99.
And this is one of HBO's first like breakout hits, right? This kind of made HBO at that time, right?
It did, and also it reshaped the way TV was for everything. Like, I know that's a tired like trope, but it really did. When you watch it, it really brought cinematic quality to episodic television.
Right, because at that time that didn't exist in that same way that we enjoy now.
Yeah, you had soap operas. You had, even
serialized shows.
Serialized shows. There was a cheesiness to it that wasn't real.
Right.
At times, Sopranos, like for example, the I ain't gonna complain about nudity, but there's times where you could see like, his office is in a strip club, so you could see HBO charging for their premium,
Right.
by showing, nudity and showing, certain bits of violence that can be gratuitous. But when you really look at it, that's not the case. It's you're seeing the rise and the fall and the evolution of not just Tony Soprano, his wife, who his wife is my favorite character of the show. Just such a strong lady, but also quiet. And she's not quiet in the sense like she's got a big mouth, but she's quiet in the sense where she takes her suffering as being, the boss's wife, knowing he has girlfriends, knowing his life is on the line, knowing like when he gets hurt at some point in the show and she's there, she doesn't leave his side despite all the things he's done to her. She's like this strong character.
Like, she understands that the world that they live in.
She understands.
She's not trying to make like, let's have the nuclear Brady Bunch family. She understands, no, I don't live in this world at all.
Yeah, and she's like, I get it, because her family was from that too. And when she tries to throw that in Tony's face, he has to correct her and be like, you knew what you were getting into, like you knew what I was in, and blah blah blah. So the movie follows a young Tony Soprano,
Okay.
and in this
again, just to make it clear, this is a prequel that predates the show.
Yeah.
What's the time period for Tony Soprano? Like, what is this?
I want to say this is about 20 to 25 years before the show.
Gotcha. So
Yeah.
before he had a family,
Yeah.
maybe before he met his wife.
I think it's even before he got made.
Oh, I see what you
before he
mean.
was inducted as an actual legit made mobster, gangster. This is when he's just kind of a neighborhood kid. And from what the trailer shows, it looks like Ray Liotta from Goodfellas is playing the lead guy. You have in the show his nephew, played by Michael Imperioli. He's also in Goodfellas. He's like his right hand man. At first you see him be a hothead. He gets into drugs, and he evolves into being like this irreplaceable part of the family. I still have a couple episodes left on the actual series. I've been binging it for the last 2 weeks, so I don't, I'm not sure how it wraps up. In the movie, you see where the roles are reversed. Instead of Tony being the mentor, he's the mentee, and you see why Tony has such a loyalty to Christopher. Because his dad is his mentor. Christopher's dad is Tony's mentor in the movie.
Right.
So you can see why Tony in the show, things that probably should have gotten Christopher killed, I'm hoping you kind of see in the movie why,
Hmm.
where it looks like Dicky Moltisanti is protecting Tony.
Right.
Tony's dad was a mobster. His uncle was a mobster. His mom was calling shots from a old folks home. You know what I mean? Like this is the world these people live in.
And do you feel like the why now though? Like that's a you know what I'm saying? Like if they've been planning this movie for 3 years, why?
Yeah.
What's the sudden interest of bringing this world, these characters back after all this time?
That's a good question. I'm not sure exactly why.
Do you feel like it's an appropriate time? Do you feel it's because the power of HBO Max and maybe people rediscovering the show? Maybe there was a spike where you know what people are starting to rewatch The Sopranos. Let's do something with this IP.
Probably, but the movie was already the movie was being talked about since the show ended in 2007. So
Oh,
it was
gotcha.
talked about, and they
It
were
just
gonna do.
never it just never happened.
It just never happened. They I think the prequel kind of became their only option after James Gandolfini died,
Oh, I see.
and I think his son is of age to be able to tell the story now, where he's his formative years as a criminal.
And it sounds like again, I know I haven't personally watched The Sopranos.
Mhm.
I know its legacy and its status in pop culture, especially in during its time period.
Yeah.
And we know it's a greatly acted show. I've seen scenes from it
Yeah.
that's intense. Do you feel like his son will be able to match up to that?
I don't know. I'm curious from the people that worked on the movie. They say that that his son is doing a great job, and that a lot of the mannerisms that only James Gandolfini can do, they see him in the son. So I'm hoping that the son that Michael Gandolfini really brings it. But if he falls short, I'm kind of coming from a place where if this is therapeutic for him, a guy lost his dad,
Right.
and if he could bring his father's most famous character, one of the most famous characters in television history, if this is therapeutic for him and this is something that works for him, if there's a way for him to say goodbye to his father another time, I think that's great. I think
Right.
that's awesome. I think I couldn't imagine that not meaning something to somebody. You know what I mean? Who's
You
in that position?
you've watched Breaking Bad. You watch a lot of shows, right? A
Yeah.
lot of crazy shows.
Too
Does The Sopranos still hold up after all these years?
It does in a lot of ways. There are times where it shows its age.
Okay.
There are moments where, shoddy camera work, maybe in the first season, a couple of bad line readings, like where a couple of, poorly acted scenes. Especially in my opinion, on the part of Christopher Moltisanti, like Michael Imperioli, who plays Spider in Goodfellas as well. He gets shot in the foot by Joe Pesci, and he's not great in the first few episodes. He has moments of greatness, but you really see him develop as an actor,
Mhm.
where he's one of the he brings this intensity to every scene that's impressive. That's like, whoa, this guy grew over the course of the show. Like, this show made this guy a better actor.
So if you've never seen the show, you're saying give it a rewatch.
Yeah. If you've seen it before, watch it again. If you haven't seen it, watch it. And just forgive it for its missteps.
Yeah, it's
Because
gonna
the
be a
overall-
period piece at the end of the day. It was made in the '90s. It's gonna have
Yeah.
some jank to it because again,
Yeah.
time period. But overall, the story's really good.
Yeah. And you look at it from a big picture point of view, and it's
Right.
like it's a sprawling universe of these mobsters and these criminals, and how they fall from grace, and how they rise to power, and how they deal with their family, with their girlfriends, with their children. Like, some of the best interactions in the show, in my opinion, are between Tony and his wife. It's not the mobster thing, it's the wife. Anytime she's on screen, I'm like, everyone shut the fuck up. Edie Falco's on screen, I need to listen to what she's saying, because she's just such a captivating character.
So you wouldn't recommend. It sounds great. Sounds like it still holds up, even though of course it's gonna have a little bit of a jank to it because of the time period. But so you shouldn't watch this movie if you don't have any attachment to this series, then, or do you think the movie will? Again, it's a prequel.
Yeah.
Do you think the movie can get people to watch the show? Maybe they can do something else in the Sopranos universe.
Maybe, and maybe they can even kind of use it as a soft reboot to tell stories that happen between the beginning of the show, where the show starts, and where the movie is at. You know what I mean? That time period between, the 70s and the 90s.
Yeah.
That's 20 years of storytelling to talk about a guy's rise to power.
Right.
The movie has a great cast. Corey Stoll, I want to say his name is. He played Yellow Jacket, and
Oh, I
he
love
played
him. Yeah.
Darren Cross in Ant-Man. He took over the role of Junior Soprano, which is Tony's uncle, who ran the family with his dad. You got Ray Liotta, you got Joey Diaz, you have a couple of other people. I can't think of them right now, but the cast in the movie looks great. You see the cast in the show, and it's all the side characters from mafia movies.
Yeah.
There's a character named Big Pussy, right? His name's Big Pussy, and he's the guy that Ray Liotta brings mink coats to. Robert De Niro and Ray Liotta, they just bring him coats in Goodfellas, and he's got a huge role in Sopranos, and he's essentially an extra in Goodfellas. Frank Vincent, who's Billy Bats in Goodfellas, he has a famous line, "Go get your fucking shine box," where Joe Pesci freaks out and stabs him, and kills him, and they take him and bury him.
Mm-hmm.
They bury him, or I think he's in the trunk alive still, and they bury him. It's real violent. He plays a really volatile character coming in on the 5th season. He gets out of prison. He's extremely violent. He's really, he's got like a bloodlust,
So a lot of these characters are going to be in the prequel?
I don't know if they're all going to be in the prequel, but you see younger versions of
a lot of these characters.
Of his crew, and you can see where Tony's crew, it's like they're street hoods. And you can, and I'm hoping you see where the street hoods become the wise guys become, the made guys, and the made guys become the leaders of the family.
Right.
So I'm hoping you see some semblance of that.
So so that's what you're hoping to see. What is your expectation of this movie then? So what is it that you want to get out of this movie? At least from what you've seen, are you looking for those intent? Are you looking for that intensity between the characters? Are you looking for just the filling in of Tony Soprano's early days?
The story. It's more the characters.
Okay.
I want to spend more time with the characters because they're so. There's Polly Walnuts. You got Silvio. Like there's all these characters that are just so. You just want to spend time with them. You see them be these badasses, but then you also see them vulnerable. You see,
I see what you mean.
A character who, it's like the story is pretty, like I said, archetypical. It's a pretty straightforward story. There's not that many twists and turns in the show. It's what happens to mobsters.
Right.
As far as movies tell us. I didn't answer your earlier question, by the way, about what you asked earlier. You said, do you think they need to see it? I don't think that people need to see the show to enjoy the movie. I think a good movie should stand on its own.
Right.
But I think just like the Marvel movies,
it might get people to watch the original show.
Not only that, you might appreciate it more.
Right.
You might like it more. There might be things that slip under your radar if you don't watch the show. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? But as far as this movie, what I want to get out of it, I just want to spend more time in that world. I want to see these characters. In the show, he goes and sees a therapist, and the therapist you start to see that he's a legitimate sociopath.
Right.
He's a legitimate narcissist. You start to see that these people are sick. like they're not like, you know what I mean? Like
they just live in a violent world.
They just live in a violent world, but they look at a lot of the characters in the show look at the things that happen as it pertains to them. They don't look at the things that happen as it pertains to other people. Mm-hmm. So they're very self-centered. A lot of the characters, Tony, something happens to another guy, and Tony's going like, "Why does this always happen to me?" Because he has to go and solve that problem.
Everything you're telling me sounds great. I'm not really big into mobster movies. I actually don't have a lot of mobster filmography, even shows. But again, I love violence. There's an anime that I feel like is kind of like a mobster anime, but
nice.
It's not because there's freaking.
What is it called?
It's a Gundam anime.
What?
But it's called Iron Blooded Orphans. But it has kind of what you're saying, where it's these kids who are trying to make themselves in a violent world and get to themselves to the top.
Yeah.
And it has those twists and turns and the sense of like, hey, we're not just child soldiers, we're fucking family.
Yeah.
Like you don't fucking betray family, in this and this and that, right? But again, some will, and because they want power, they want greed. Which again, that's always the mythos of
right.
Mobster culture, or at least Italian mobster films, right?
Yeah.
One thing I wanted to ask you, how do you feel that they're making this into a movie rather than a TV series? Because I feel like, based on what you're telling me, it kind of sounds like you need more time for these characters. I don't think you can get all
Right.
of this in
Right.
a 2.5 hour movie, however long it is. It kind of feels maybe they should have gone with the show. Or how do you feel about it? Do you
Maybe.
do you prefer it that's a movie that way it's a one and done? You tell a more concise, tight story, or do you feel like it could have been conducted for a larger TV show?
That's a good point, but I think that watching, like, for example, like the X-Files films,
Hmm.
maybe not the second one, but the first one, which was good. El Camino, the way El Camino kind of was a 2-hour film, which in my opinion, like Aaron Paul should have got nominated for an Oscar,
Hmm.
like for El Camino. Like he was badass in that. Like you see a human, you don't see a character, you see a human. You know what I mean? And those to me are the best, like these gritty crime type of stories. And let's be real, in crime movies, the crime and the violence and the mafia and the family and all of that, that's the setting.
Yeah,
That's just
exactly.
the setting. But what really draws you to those movies is the characters. It's how how they're still people. They're not just these, hey, how you doing? And they're just like, they're not caricatures. They're actual characters that go through things that, they're human beings.
They evolve, they learn,
They
they make
change, yeah.
mistakes, and they pray for them.
Yeah. And so I think that the way El Camino showed that with Jesse Pinkman,
Hmm.
where it was a 2-hour movie that took place in a show that had practically 6 seasons,
And it's take place right after that
immediately
that
after,
show.
yeah,
Yeah.
like literally seconds after the show ended.
But I feel like at least for El Camino, we never got a conclusion to that character. So it makes a little bit more sense
Yeah,
why
yeah.
they went down that project to give closure to Jesse Pinkman's
I
character,
understand that.
or
That's a
to
good
that
point.
character.
Yeah, that is a good point.
But I do like, I think, sorry, it sounds like they're trying to, see if there's any interest to do
Right,
something
right.
bigger with the Soprano license. And I think, and again, it's a series based on already a solid
A
foundation,
tried and true method.
a
Yeah,
tried and true method, and maybe this is just a way to maybe get a new generation involved.
that would be great. I'd have like if they started doing it, and then they were just telling different stories that were happening within, like parallel stories that were happening while the show was going on,
Hmm.
and Michael Gandolfini can play, Tony Soprano into his 50s. Great, sure, but even if they, it all starts taking place in the past, sure too.
Yeah,
Um, for me, I think that I just want to see good storytelling.
yeah,
And The Sopranos, as far as characters and the way all stories have pretty much been told already.
hmm
You can't. There's not really original stories. Like you really, even the most original story you can think of,
it's based on something.
is based on, you have, for every Rogue One you have Halo Reach. It's the same fucking movie. It's the same, like, it's the same story. But it's like, it's the way it's told. You know
Right.
what I mean? It's the way how
And your attachment to it, because
Yeah.
just because it's a story that's been told before, if someone has never seen that story, that's their first version of
the
seeing that
first
story.
version of it. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's definitely true. But no, I'm excited about it. I'm really excited. Joey Diaz is a comedian that I really get a kick out of watching sometimes,
Hmm.
and he's in the show too. So I'm excited to see that. I can't think, like I said, I can't think of the cast. Oh, Vera Farmiga, I think her name is. She's the lady from The Conjuring, and she's in
Is she the main lady?
she's the main lady in The Conjuring, and
Oh,
she's in
okay.
Bates Motel, and she's also in The Departed and some
Is
other
she
movies.
Bates Motel, the show, the new one?
Yeah. She's the mom. She's what's his name's mom?
Oh.
What's the guy's name?
Sorry, I haven't seen Bates Motel. I've seen the
Norman
original
Bates.
movie.
Norman Bates. She's Norman Bates' mom.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah. So she plays Tony Soprano's mom, which left a lot of questions because the old lady that played her, she died in the middle of the third season, or
Oh,
in the beginning of the third or fourth season. She died, so there was a lot of unanswered questions there for me, at least. I don't know if that other people felt that way. They literally had a stand-in actress and then CGI'd her head and it looked weird, and then she died in her sleep.
oh man, this is like early '90s CGI too, right?
Early 2000s, yeah.
Early 2000s
Yeah.
CGI must have been
Yeah.
horrible.
It's bad, but once you get over it, you get
Yeah.
over it, and you understand. Like right when I saw it, I was like, "Oh, the actress must have died," and then I looked it up, and yeah, sure enough, she died
Okay.
in between seasons. So,
Because even now we still have issues.
We still can't get it right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm excited to see more of Livia. I think her name's Livia Soprano.
Hmm.
I want to see more of that because she had a narcissistic personality disorder, and she hated Tony. So she abused him. She did, and he in turn, they went back and forth,
Hmm.
and you get into the psychology of the characters because they're getting help. A lot of the characters are in therapy in the show,
Yeah.
and you really get in there, in a way that you'd never see in other mobster movies, or other mobster stories. So I want to see more of that,
Okay.
more of Tony and his mother, how they interacted, and
And
what
this
led to their dysfunction later on.
and this might just be a stepping stone to bring in that maybe that those characters, and we may get a second, third movie
yeah.
that might explain more about his rise to
Sure.
power, things like that, and you'll be able to enjoy these with a brand new cast of actors.
Yeah. So I'm really excited, man. I've gone on about it, but I think it's gonna be I'm very hopeful for it. I want to see it.
Okay, speaking of stuff that's coming back, or let's talk about a game that makes me feel like I'm going back in time a bit.
All right.
Let's talk about Greedfall.
Yes.
I've been playing this game on Xbox Game Pass, obviously.
Right.
That's all I feel that's how I play all my games now. It's just let's see what's on Xbox Game
Why
Pass.
have it any other way?
Right. Though I am excited for a couple games that are coming out. I still want to get Scarlet Nexus. I want to get the new Monster Hunter game that came out on the Switch.
Oh, nice.
But anyways, right now I'm 100% stuck on Greedfall. Let me tell you why. Well, let me paint you a picture. Greedfall is a game that reminds me of what made BioWare great back in the early 2000s.
Okay.
With Dragon Age, with Mass Effect, right?
Yeah.
It feels like a game that comes from that time period because it certainly plays like it. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Greedfall is a game where you're playing as Desarte. He is the cousin of the governor that's gonna rule this island called Tirfredi, right? And it's a story about colonialism. It's a story about setting up a government, setting up a city in a different world, right?
Yeah.
And this world is a world that has monsters. It is a world that has magic, right?
Great.
But it definitely has that almost I don't want to say Victorian era colonialism. But it has what do you call the colonialism where it's like English, the English colonizing America. What is that time period called?
I think that's colonial America.
Colonial America, right? It
Yeah,
reminds me of that, but with a French twist to it, because there's a lot of
kind of like Dishonored.
kind of like Dishonored.
That
Yes.
aesthetic.
It has that aesthetic, but with no steampunk. It does
Gotcha.
have magic. It does have like the look of a French colonial, almost mixed in with like American colonials a little bit.
That's
just
cool.
because they have those little triangle hats,
Yeah,
little
patriot hats.
the little patriot hats.
Sam Adams.
But they have fluffy feathers and
Nice.
things like that. And the reason I want to talk about Greedfall is, one, I didn't know that this game even existed.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, I saw a trailer on YouTube of the gold edition, right? Where they're gonna add like a DLC to it.
Nice.
I looked like, wow, and it's amazing how have I never seen this game before when it's straight up a Kevin game. Like it's something that
Game.
I want to get into. I want to lose myself in this world.
Yeah.
And be able to see where these side quests go, just like how The Witcher grabs you with different characters, different side quests, different areas and sections that have their own politics, that have their own beliefs.
Yeah.
This game totally has all this, all these type of mechanics and great storytelling. A little bit like the choices you make, like the good and bad choices,
Right.
are very like simplistic in some ways, in some side quests, right?
Like a little linear, maybe.
A little linear.
Okay.
But overall, it's a great experience. And the reason I wanted to bring Greedfall up is because this is, in my opinion, a double A game. It's not made by it's not made by AAA studios. It's not made by the big studio or even a big developer.
Yeah.
But it's not an indie developer either. It's like they're in the middle, right?
It's like a solid mid-budgeted game.
Like a good B plus rated game. And
Cool.
to me, this game is an A because it takes chances and it brings back a familiarity that I'm used to, like making big decisions that in games, and especially in RPGs like in Mass Effect or BioWare's games like Jade Empire, Mass Effect, Dragon Age, where like, hey, you have these options. If your charisma is strong enough, you can talk your way out of it. If you don't have charisma, you can't talk your way out of it. Maybe you can intimidate. Maybe you can find a different solution for this quest.
Right.
And again, I've just been really enjoying this type of game, and I wanted to ask you, have you noticed that a lot of these games on Xbox Game Pass, I feel like I would have never given it my time of day if I had to
Absolutely.
like spend money on it.
Yeah.
But now that I have, now that I'm like 10, 12 hours deep into Greedfall, I want to buy it. You know, like I'm
Yeah.
gonna buy it. Like because eventually it will leave Game Pass. I want to own this game because I know it's gonna take me hundreds of hours to see everything this game can offer.
Greedfall is to you what Witcher was to me.
Right.
I didn't want to like Witcher, not for any reason. I just didn't want to like. I don't need another game in my life. You know what I mean? I was like, I just want to play my games and just move on. But Witcher, it's like I needed to do everything. Like I still want to go back and play everything. But that's literally the best thing when a game where you want to continue
Right.
to exist in that world as you play. That's what else could you want in a game? Whether it's a B game, a C game, D game, whatever. That's the promised land when you want to go back into that place. As far as like the games as far as the games that you would never give a chance to, I think that's the best part. That's my favorite part of Game Pass.
Right.
Is that there's just titles that don't mean shit to me, and then I go and I plug them in and I'm like, I love this. This is fun.
I love that Game Pass not only gives us the ability to try out a game that, again, like you said, like maybe we never heard of, maybe give it a shot. It just caught our eye one day.
Yeah.
Maybe you saw a picture or a trailer, or someone talked about it on social media. You know what? I have that on Game Pass. Let me give it a try. Boom, you're hooked. They
Yeah.
got you. And when they get you, it's like, hey, you may buy Greedfall 2 when it comes out at full price because you already love it because you fell in love with it in Game Pass.
Right.
And I think that's the magic of it. But two, I forgot, or not forgot, but it's been a while since I bought a game of that certain level of production where it's not AAA, it's not a million-dollar game.
Right.
I'm pretty sure it costs a lot to make that game, and it definitely has its rough edges. Like it doesn't play all that great in some forms, but it does good enough where you forgive it for its roughness because the core of it is so fun or so good.
It gets more right than it gets wrong.
Exactly.
That's important to look at too. You can't. It's really hard to just dismiss a game over its flaws while you ignore its strengths. You know what
Exactly.
I don't think that's a fair assessment of anything. If a movie has a bad scene or if a show has a bad episode, it's not. It's dismissive to be like, that's all there is to it. I'm not going to go back to it.
Mhm.
They're like these games. They a lot of the time when they're like these double A games, like you said, they get a lot more right sometimes than they get wrong. If it's unplayable, it's unplayable.
Yeah, that's a different issue because
Yeah.
again, you want to make sure that someone can play your game because otherwise, again, it's important. I think a developer said that the most important part of your game is how does your player interact with your game. If the button that you're pressing is that satisfying, I'm getting satisfaction choosing my choices for my answers of how I want to navigate through this conversation or
Right.
negotiate out of a tough situation. That's what grabs me about this game. I like that in the combat. Again, a little stiff,
Mhm.
but serviceable, right? You
Yeah.
can still have fun. You have firearms. You have traps, magic, and
Mhm.
sword fighting in the combat. And it kind of feels like. Have you ever played Dragon Age Inquisition, the one that
Yeah.
came out?
Yeah.
It kind of feels like that a
I think
little bit.
I borrowed it from you for like 6 months.
Oh, and I just love that I'm glad I found this game because it's really hitting that spot where like I
Yeah.
wanted to just lose myself in the world, and I had never played a game that looked like this where it is about colonialism, right?
Right.
It is about going to this different world. How do these different factions fit with each other when they're all trying to get a piece of this land, right? Because there's definitely sides you have to take, or sides, or, I'm saying like
Decisions you have to make.
decisions
and,
you have to make.
Alliances too.
Alliances that you want to make, and you can't please everyone. It's impossible. This
Mhm.
is trying to like play a little bit with your morality. Like you're gonna have to make hard, tough shit decisions, and you
Yeah,
have to
man.
draw a line eventually.
What would this game describe the gameplay to me? Because I saw it and I saw it on Game Pass. I wanted to play it, and then I downloaded that shark game, and that's just
Maneater.
Maneater, and I would just mindlessly be an apex predator. You know. Um,
And again, that's another example of a double A game. It's not triple A,
yeah,
but it's a fun idea.
it's
That
fun. Yeah.
you maybe you'll beat it, maybe you'll just give it an hour, and you know what, that was
Yeah.
fun, and I had enough.
Yeah, yeah. I play it with my nephew, and he's 6, so it's a good it's easy enough to where he can play it and I can play it, and it's fun for both of us. It
Right,
reminds me a lot of like kind of in the vein of Destroy All Humans, you know,
right, right.
not in the gameplay, not in the mechanics, but in the tone. In the tone, it feels like that, where it's just like people are fucking expendable. You know what I mean? Just kill 10 people on the beach, okay? You know, where like in Destroy All Humans, it's like disintegrate, 10 cops. Um, but based on games that most people might know, like so if one of our listeners doesn't has never played Greedfall, and you're trying to pull games as far as their gameplay goes, describe the gameplay to me. Like, is it a third person? Is it a shooter? Is it like, I understand that there's conversations, but what is the combat like? What does the art direction look like?
The art direction is definitely they're going for realistic colonial. It's not steampunk, but it is like a dark gritty world where people have tattoos and people wear
Nice.
like depending on where you come from and who your alliance is, people have different tribal costumes, right? Like you will have
Nice.
your native costumes. You have people who believe in science. Like these are like all the nerds are in this
Yeah.
society, and then you and the gameplay is a third person action gameplay, but it's like the game kind of pans out and shows your party members because you have two people. It's almost like Dragon Age. You
Dragon
have
Age,
party
yeah.
members that are gonna fight on their own that you put points into and they have their own moves and abilities.
And you can upgrade them and also assign tasks to them as far as like go over here.
No, they're completely on their own.
Oh, they're completely AI.
Exactly. I kind of feel like that's the double A part of it where you don't have
Mm-hmm.
full control because I think they just want you to be in control of your character because it probably costs too much money to be able to control everyone.
Right, right, right.
You have your character, you're again on a 3D plane. You sword swing, you dodge, almost like a little bit of a Dark Souls where you can
Okay.
dodge and block.
Yeah.
But again, it's not like, super precise. You know,
Yeah.
like you can get fucked up or like something that should have hit doesn't hit.
Doesn't hit.
Yeah.
I see.
But again, it has shooting mechanics. So if you're locked on, you can shoot them. I'm playing as a hunter, more like an assassin. So I'm putting my points into speed and strength,
Okay.
and putting those points in that category lets me use traps. And then if I can get the enemy AI to walk over my trap, then it explodes and they take damage.
All right.
And you can knock people down, stun them, and you see a little bar above their head, almost like Marvel's Avengers. There's a little bar on top of their head where
Yeah.
they have this much armor. You need to knock this armor down to be able to knock them down, so they can do major damage.
Okay.
Things like that.
So the most comparable game that you can think of right off the bat would be Dragon Age.
Dragon Age, like early Dragon Age.
Yeah.
Not that it's a circle. You have complete control of your character because in Dragon Age you could set it to auto attack and then just choose abilities as the fight goes on.
Yeah.
Each button does something. X is a sword swing. Y is a counter. B is to dodge. Things like that. You're moving around with these characters, and then you can set up abilities on your triggers. Like
Okay.
left is my gun, and my right is all my different traps that I have available to me.
Are there mechanics in the game that you feel are unique to the game,
One thing that I think
or
that-
features?
that's another thing that I feel like it gives that double A feeling where like kind of like Star Wars Fallen Order.
Mhm.
It doesn't do anything new. It just borrows from elements that we already know and love.
Right.
Like in Dragon Age, or even Mass Effect, you can get abilities and powers and put your points into different categories. But if you put
Okay.
those points there, you won't have access to this anymore. Like let's say in
I see.
Fallout, you can choose to be a hacker in Fallout. But if you're putting your points into these certain categories, you won't be able to access the entire roster of
The
abilities.
entire
You
tree.
have to make a choice.
I see.
Like the way I'm playing, there in those points that you put into them, those abilities or those talents, it affects how you interact with the game. So, for example, you're the cousin of the governor, right?
Okay.
Before you leave the city, he gets drunk and he talks shit, and some bunch of thugs just kidnap him. And he's like, you know what? You've been talking too much shit. We're gonna kick your ass and just hold you for ransom, right?
Mhm.
So you have to go get his ass out. You can talk your way out of it if you have enough charm. If you put a lot of points into be able to talk your way out of stuff.
Charm people.
You can blow up the wall if you have science points to make an explosive.
Nice.
You can jump over from the previous building to the next building to get into that base if you have enough vigor, meaning that you have enough athletic
Like
ability.
energy and.
So it has those moments where if you put your points into certain ways, you can approach the situation depending on your choices. And you have multiple ways to approach that situation as well. Let's say you have a lot of money, you just buy your way. You know what? I end up just
Pay his
paying.
bail.
I just paid his bail.
Yeah.
Because I had all this money because I had done on all these side quests beforehand, right? But again, I could have blown up the wall with my science skill. If I had science skill, I could have talked my way out of it, or I could have jumped over if I had put my points into there.
That's cool.
And I think that's I guess that's the unique part that I like about it, is that not only is the storytelling really strong, it lets you approach it however you want to play that character.
Custom to your kind of play style.
Exactly. And but you're locked in. Like, it's not one of those games where, like, oh, you can get everything that's on this grid. No. You're locked into your choices. And if you're going to go full science, go full science.
Yeah.
You know, things like that.
I see. That's cool, man. That sounds great. I think I'm going to download it because I want to know what you're talking about.
And again, it just gets deep because it really goes into the politics. Like, you find out that the people who believe in science or have a nation where, like, science is held to a higher regard,
Right.
they're a bunch of pieces of shit too, because they have illegal scientific experiments that they want to keep hush hush, and there's people who are trying to, like, hey, these scientists are doing bad things, and I want to tell people outside the world, you know, that they're doing bad things, and they're trying to shut them up, and you're helping, and you can choose, should I help this person who's stuck between me and this alliance, right? Like, should I help this person who's being persecuted by his society, or should I turn him in and get points with them?
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Things like that.
Kind of like Fallout, when you have to pick whether you're going
You
to
have
be
to pick
like
a side.
the Institute, the Brotherhood of Steel, the Minutemen,
Right.
the Underground Railroad, or the Railroad, I think it's called Underground Railroad. No, that's really cool.
And again, like I tell you, like, it's a double A game. It doesn't do anything super, in my opinion, super unique, but it gives you what you like from those games of that certain era. You know, there was that BioWare magic that used to exist before the shit show that was Mass Effect Andromeda, before
Right.
fucking Anthem. You know, before these things that had happened before, and that led BioWare to go down this path and
Kind of fall from grace a little
kind of got
bit.
fall from
Yeah.
grace. But I love that, you know, there's other developers that are able to pick up that mantle, where maybe BioWare isn't fulfilling that role that they used to fulfill, but hey,
Yeah.
you might get out of this the development team is called Spiders.
Nice.
That's what they're called. And I'm like, I try to look into them. They're not big. This is one of the very first games
Yeah.
they've made, and I'm like, you know what, for being a great game, or sorry, being like one of their first games, I think they try to go for the stars.
Mhm.
They falter, but the heart is there, I guess.
The attempt was an earnest, honest, novel attempt to make it work.
Exactly.
What year did this game come out?
Ooh, that's a good question. Hold on.
Sure.
Let's see. Let's see.
This is why we need music.
We need a fact checker.
I know, right?
This game came out in 2019.
2019, so it's a newer game.
It's a new game, but it looks like a 2000s game, like
Right.
early 2000s game.
So the graphics are have a little.
Well, I'm playing on the Series X, so it is upgraded to 4K. But even upgraded, it still looks a little, again, rougher on the edges.
rough.
But it looks great. I think the art style still makes up for it. It doesn't try to be super realistic, but it does have like human character faces. You see the same old man faces on every old man face.
Yeah, it's gotta get tired. Question. So I have a two-part question. What is your favorite and least favorite part of the game? What is something that you think that, what is an area in the game where, let's say they do make a sequel, what should they lean into?
Yeah.
And aside from the combat, because we already established that the combat could be a little bit janky, and that's always a thing when you know, even when you play like the first Arkham game, you know, like there's some parts where you just can't aim your hits right, you know.
Right, and eventually they'll fix it by the second one.
By the second game, you have this
fluid, yeah.
Same thing with Assassin's Creed, where the first one,
ooh, yeah,
it was stiff. To be honest, the story wise, the first one's my favorite.
Yeah,
I love the first one because I didn't know what the hell was going on, and as I played it, and things were revealed, I was just like, oh shit, they're going there. Kind of like Indiana Jones and the Crystal Skull and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skulls, but done right. You know what I mean? Where it's like, I thought it was a historical thing that was accessed through sci-fi, and then it was mysticism too. You know,
right,
so it's
exactly.
like a marrying of sci-fi and mysticism. So I really didn't know what I was getting into when the first Assassin's Creed, the first playthrough when it was brand new. What are playing this game? What are elements that you wish that they keep? and what are elements that you wish that they abandoned?
I definitely keep the storytelling. The
Right.
storytelling is the strongest part of this game. The world building, the politics, like they go hard on like these are actual people. These are the factions that these are their beliefs, their system, their customs.
Yeah.
They really like give you enough variety of people where it doesn't feel like a copy and paste. Like no, they took
Right.
time to develop this world and what the politics of this world would be and
That's
how
great.
you're gonna navigate because you're the cousin of a governor that has to establish his foothold in this colony.
Okay. Okay.
And you know what I'm saying? Like that's the strongest part.
Yeah.
The weakest part I think is um it's just too easy to say the combat. Okay, the second weakest part
Yeah. Yeah.
would be the how these systems work with each other. Because I feel like sometimes when you're putting points into this or that for your abilities or for how you fight, I don't think it's super clear of how this affects the world until you get a good couple of hours in, right?
I see.
But again, I don't think that's a fault in the game itself. I just feel like I guess they need not better tutorials, but just to show you like, hey,
Clarification.
clarification. Like,
Yeah.
hey, if you wanna like be able to brute force your way out of a fight, if you put points into this, then you can become kind of like a warrior, right?
Right.
And be able to fight your way out. Or if you want to outthink people, then you can put points into this. You know,
Yeah.
I wish like that was explained a little bit better, but you eventually get it. Like you eventually like as you play through the game, you realize, oh, this is how the game plays, right?
Okay.
Even if it doesn't tell you. And I don't want it to be super handholdy either. I just
Yeah,
want
yeah.
like I guess the introduction is what I have problems with because they throw a lot of stuff at you all at once. Like
I see.
they're like, okay, this is the combat, this is the abilities, this is where you put your
Wow.
points in. Da, 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 da. I kind of feel like some of the best games is when they introduce each aspect of the game
Little by little.
little by little as they come up. But the thing, I've played games like Persona where like sometimes it'll be like 10 hours in and they introduced a new mechanic.
A
And-
game-changing mechanic.
or a new tutorial for
Yeah.
a new mechanic or the last mechanic of the game.
BioShock did stuff like that too, where as you would, unlock some of the abilities and stuff like that, suddenly you have it like it turned the entire gameplay on its head. I think they did it right. And it's funny because you're describing Greedfall, and it sounds like you're describing Dishonored, even though I know they're totally different games. But from the aesthetics to the way the factions work to even the combat, where Dishonored has the perk of being Dishonored has a perk of being a shooter,
Yeah.
right? But there's a lot of first person melee combat in it
Yeah,
too.
there's a lot, and in all this is third person action. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So
Um,
aside from that, it does sound like they're like I don't know. I'm trying to picture Greedfall, but I just keep getting images of Dishonored in my head.
But again, the setting's great. I never played a game like
Yeah.
this where you're a colonizer,
Nice.
and there's this group of natives that people just treat them like trash. And
Ugh.
I choose my guy not to treat them like trash
Yeah.
to be able to befriend them. But eventually, there's going to be a point where I know the game's going to be like, you can't help these natives when you're trying to help your people. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. At some point, you're gonna have to turn your back on somebody.
Or somebody, right? I
Yeah.
can't make nice to everyone, and that's the type of game that I think Dragon Age or Bioware used to make. I think I think Dragon Age is in a good spot right now. I know Dragon Age 4 is going to come back after the fuck up of Anthem and after the fuck up of Mass Effect. They said that,
Yeah.
you know what, we took out all the multiplayer parts out of Dragon Age 4, whatever they're going to call it, right?
Yeah.
They took that out completely. They're like, we're just going to make a single player game,
Yeah.
which I'm like, thank you, because again, I understand everyone's trying to chase the live service Fortnite model, like let's make a sprawling multiplayer, get everyone's money type of game. But again, like I feel like if you make a spin-off game, that's fine. Don't mess with the main series games that got you there.
Not everybody wants to play multiplayer.
Yeah,
Not everybody wants to play that. Some people really enjoy
losing yourself in the world.
Yeah,
And-
The Witcher.
Yeah.
Like it's a perfect example. I hate to bring it up again, but it's a perfect example of like, you're just in this world. You're on your own and you're doing what you got to do to navigate this world to reach your ends, So I'm very interested in playing Greedfall because it sounds like you said, it's taking from a lot of great games that are established and just polishing them up and putting them all in one place. What was the game that you mentioned earlier that was that did that as well? That it pulled from a bunch of games.
Jedi Fallen Order.
Jedi Fallen
I
Order.
feel like, again, Jedi Fallen Order just feels like a lighter version of Dark Souls. That combat is
Yeah.
Dark Souls, right?
Yeah.
Or even even Shadow of War, Shadow of Mordor.
Yeah.
That just felt like a Batman Assassin's Creed mashup, but in a Lord of the Rings setting.
Yeah, and you throw a car in there and you have Mad Max.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But again, Mad Max is a perfect example of another
Double A.
that has AAA money,
Yeah.
but it feels like a AA game.
Yeah.
Because again, there's some parts of Mad Max just feel like it's copy and paste from other stuff.
Right.
But the car combat was the greatest part of it, right? I love smashing my car and fighting other cars and my upgrades in Mad Max. I thought that was great. I thought the
Yeah.
car combat was the strongest part of it.
You know, I not to be sacrilegious, but I think that some of the stiffness, because in Batman and in Shadow of Mordor and even the Assassin's Creed games, the combat's very fluid. Once they hit their stride, once they figured it out,
Yeah.
maybe it took a game or two,
Yeah,
know,
which
but
again,
once they got it, you know, they really got it. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? As opposed to like Mad Max, which I would compare to The Witcher, where The Witcher has great combat, but it takes a minute to get used to the rhythm of that combat. You know, it's not the same as the free flow stuff. You know,
right?
but I really enjoyed the combat in Mad Max because it was stiffer. You know.
Yeah.
But you know, it's a wasteland cop with a bum leg. You know what I mean? And God only knows what you would fight like in that case. You know, I kind of like the stiffness of that combat. You
Right.
know,
It gives it a little bit of a grit and an identity that this is that game.
Yeah, yeah.
And I feel like playing Greedfall gives me that. Like there's some jank,
it was
but
appropriate.
But guess what? Like I feel like that's what gives it some of its identity. You know,
Yeah.
that's what gives it some of its charm because
Yeah.
it's trying for so many things. It's gonna fail at some of them,
Something had to give.
but it's still. I like that they're shooting for the sorry. I like that they're still shooting for the stars
Yeah.
and trying to aim for that.
That's
Those
great.
high heights, even though they don't necessarily have the budget for it.
Is there any news on a sequel or any
Well,
kind of expansion on that world?
When I saw that trailer, it was for the gold edition that comes with a brand new DLC that was released now. That's why I thought,
Oh.
maybe I can buy the game. It was $40 to buy the whole complete edition with the DLC and everything. And then you told me that it was on Game Pass. So
Yeah.
then I just downloaded it on Game Pass. That's how this all started.
Yeah.
But I want to buy it. Like I'm
Cool.
gonna play on Game Pass once it leaves Game Pass. That's when I'll buy it.
That's where you're gonna buy it.
That's when I got because I'm already in.
I'm gonna download it. So hopefully by next episode I'll be able to tell you my take on it. Because no, you sold me on it. I wanna play it because I was gonna play it. I just didn't know anybody who had played it.
Mm-hmm.
So when you brought it up to me,
Me neither. Like I
Yeah.
saw a trailer. I'm like, how? Again, like I mentioned, there's some games that are gonna fall to the wayside because you just never heard of it.
Yeah, you just
because
never-
there's so many games nowadays.
Yeah.
Like it's impossible to know about every single game.
and you don't know either as far as quality. You know, you got AAA games that are coming out like shit.
Fucking
And then-
shit.
Yeah, we don't gotta fucking name names, but you know, like straight up, we got AAA games that sound like dog shit.
Yeah.
You know, and then we also have like B games that are actually pretty damn good.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Because again, I've had fun with games before. Like the one I go to is the one made by Saints Row, Agents of Mayhem.
Nice.
That's always my go-to game. It's a terrible game. I fucking loved it. I had fun with it. I got what I wanted from
Which
that
game is
game.
that?
Agents of Mayhem was kind of like their version of G.I. Joe versus Cobra, but with that Saints Row type of humor.
Yeah.
But again, it was janky. It's not the best built game. Like there's a lot of jank in it. They eventually fixed some of it, but it's still pretty broken, right?
Yeah.
And really generic. Like the enemies are really generic. The fun of that game were the characters. You could switch between 3 different heroes.
Okay.
But a lot of people said like, well, I think it failed because imagine if you play these heroes with other people, kind of like Borderlands, right?
Okay.
Where you can all go into this adventure. But for whatever reason, they didn't do that. You could clearly see that maybe that was the plan at some point.
Yeah.
Because they had like 9 or 12 different heroes.
Oh my god.
And you can switch between 3 of them as a single player person. But it would have been fun if, let's say, you were the tough biker chick with the fucking chain gun.
Yeah.
Chain gun, and I was like the
tech guy.
the tech guy, the
Yeah.
Indian tech girl, whatever, right? Like, I forgot some of the names.
Sure.
There was this one great character that I loved that he was like the crazy European football guy.
Nice.
And he would just beat up
Like
people.
a football hooligan.
Yeah, exactly. And then
Yeah.
he would just he had this powers where he would explode. You had a Japanese like demon mask mafia guy, Yakuza
Nice.
guy,
Yeah.
and he had like a great abilities. But again, Agents of Mayhem had definitely like AA, right? Like you could see that this was a spin-off game based on their Saints Row engine, and they were just trying to see if they could make something during that time where Overwatch was huge, Borderlands was
Right.
huge. Those hero games where each hero had abilities and their own
Yeah.
play style was huge. you only got to switch between 3 characters because each character had like their role. Like there was a big burly Russian ice guy, right? He
Nice.
was the tank. He takes the damage. So
And he
you
had
would,
ice powers.
and he had ice power, so he could freeze and slow people. You switch to another character, then can do the more, the serious damage. So he slows things. You switch to someone who does damage, and then you switch to someone who needs to break their armor.
And this is a third person action.
This
kinda?
was a third person
Okay.
action, but again, it was okay. But I can find, I feel like games like AA, games that are indies, right? They don't have the marketing or the budget,
The resources.
or the resources to get this in front of people's faces. Because someone,
Right.
I'm pretty sure there's people who are going to enjoy Greedfall, but never heard of it.
Right, and I'm hoping Game Pass, and I'm hoping Game Pass serves games like that
Definitely.
are solid, that are earnest. That they're honest attempts to make fun games.
Yeah.
They don't have to be like. That's the thing people need to understand. We don't need great games. We need fun games. You
Fun
know
games.
what I mean? Like Goat Simulator. Like that game's huge because it's fun.
Yeah.
It's a shitty game by all intents and purposes.
Yeah.
By all definitions, it's a terrible game, but it's fun,
Mhm.
and that's what keeps people coming back. So I like the fact that Game Pass has that that it enables you. There's the elote man. That it enables you to play these games that you would otherwise ignore, or they would fall by the wayside, or you'd have to watch watch a video that had a review, or be
Yeah.
told by somebody that's a great game. But just being on Game Pass, it's accessible. You hit download. You don't like it,
Yeah.
you uninstall it.
Yeah,
That's
uninstall it. Go back, go play something
No
else.
harm, no foul. You lost
But-
an hour or two.
But now I'm all in on Greedfall because of Game Pass. Like I'm
Yeah.
gonna, if they make a sequel, I'm gonna be there day one because I already love what they already
Right.
put out now.
That's great, man. Yeah, I'm gonna
And
try
that's
it
the
out.
power of building the brand, right?
Yeah.
And it's the power of again. Sorry, I know it always sounds like we're just sucking Xbox's dick.
Hey, man.
Because of the Game Pass. But again, I just appreciate that it was on Game Pass. I got to try out this new series that I had never heard of. Don't know who the publisher is. Never heard of the studio before, and I found a really good, enjoyable experience that I'm willing to dig and put more time into.
That's great. It's working. The
Right.
business model's working.
Exactly.
That's great.
Well, that was a great episode. Let's go, guys. We will see you for next time for ShootNLoot episode 9. Bye, everyone.
Episode 10. Bye, everybody.